Hi everyone and welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is May 9th, 2017. You can't talk about Japanese politics in any meaningful way unless you include the meaning of scandal and its role in Japanese politics. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Cucek. Michael?
Yeah.
Once again, scandalously joining.
I'm trying to.
It's spring. Spring's eternal during spring, and it seems like it's just the time for scandals to come up. One of the ministers of state has bit the bullet.
Yep, it was amazing. We were discussing this very issue 2 weeks ago, and on that very day, a minister finally came down.
He sure did.
Because he could not control his mouth. Now, the thing that he said, and we're talking about the Reconstruction Minister Imamura Masahiro, was, in retrospect, very small. It was a gaffe, but it was a gaffe in the course of doing all kinds and thinking all kinds of other things.
Right.
And it was
By the way, before you get into it, I'm glad that it's Tuesday today and not Monday.
And why is that?
Because I'm glad it was Tohoku and not Tokyo.
Oh.
Right. That's what you were leading into. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's the thing. I'm glad it was.
It's a twist of the words, and I was there. I actually joined this Hagimaskai, this fundraising meeting, and it came off the tip of the tongue as if it was a prepared statement. I mean, it was not off the cuff. It flowed with the rest of his presentation.
And the idea was that if you look at it from a very, very objective standpoint, and unfortunately we humans, we don't, is the statement that, it hit the Tohoku, a depopulated, low technology, low industry area of the country, was hit by this tsunami and by this earthquake. And Fukushima was a little bit somewhat different, but that also is in a largely rural environment. Imagine, was his point, if it had been in the Tokyo, Nagoya, or Osaka areas where the core population and industry and finance centers are. That was what he wanted to say. Mm-hmm. He wanted to set up a hypothetical. But what everybody remembered was the way he said it. It was good that it was the Tohoku.
Right.
That snippet went viral.
Right. Well, once again, they have been watching him. They've been looking at him to see what other gaffes he's going to make. And he
was set up because he had already shouted down a reporter who had tried to ask questions.
Right.
And the issue of Reconstruction and Fukushima and refugees from the Fukushima disaster, those who had to move because of the radiation levels, those who had to move because they were afraid of the radiation levels in their communities, all that is very, very touchy.
Yes.
And he's not a touchy guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for something to get him, and they got him.
All right, but the disaster happened 6 years ago. He is Minister of Reconstruction. How many ministers of Reconstruction have they had since the disaster?
A lot.
Like 6. And he's out, and they've got a new one in, and all of this happened within a time frame of maybe 4 hours?
Well, it happened at the same party.
Yes.
Because Abe actually repudiated his minister during that party.
Right.
When he had his own remarks. And Nikai, who was the main host, had to say his bit. Mm-hmm. And it was just minutes after his gaffe that he was gone. Mm-hmm. Or at least he really was no longer a viable political entity, Mr. Imamura.
But this isn't really a scandal in the context of sexual innuendo and touching your secretary and stuff like that.
Or money with large amounts being given illegally. No.
It was not even a slip of the tongue. It was just a twist of the words, and he was out of there.
That's right. And it just shows the sensitivity of the Abe administration to this idea that they don't care.
No, I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's because they're on tenterhooks, and we don't want any more screw-ups. We don't want you to be sleeping with your secretary. We don't want you to be doing this. We don't want you to be doing... And if you are, watch what happened to this guy in 4 hours.
That's possibly one way of looking at it. I see it more as really a Reconstruction issue, and that it was really for them. But maybe you're right. Certainly, there is a complete mismatch between the turnover in that job and its supposed importance. You're completely right in pointing out that that discrepancy.
Right.
If it was so important, there should be a tsar
Right.
of that position to sit in it for years and solve the problems.
And how was he selected in the first place? I mean, he came from the Nikkei faction, and that was one of the distribution of power bases that is given by the prime minister to keep these people close to him. But I don't understand why he, as a personality, was selected for that particular role.
It's really bizarre. He's an old JR executive from Saga Prefecture, the other side of the country, which frankly doesn't care about the Tohoku. And indeed, so some people died in Eastern Japan. Well, that's what happens.
You're going to be forced to resign for saying that.
No, this is actually a quotation from Dick Samuel's research into the disaster, where he actually asked someone from a diet member from Western Japan. He said, it's only 20,000 people.
Oh gosh.
And because you're from Western Japan, you cannot care about Eastern Japan. Now, Imamura has been replaced by a person from the region, from the Tohoku himself. And the new minister is therefore okay. One aspect of the story that we should immediately get onto is how quickly that phrase was passed around on Twitter and other social media, and how quickly the public turned it over. But it was, again, within the matter of hours, this phrase, it's good that it was the Tohoku, started out as everyone being livid that he had put down the Tohoku. And then someone clicked it on and put it on a baseball win by the Rakuten Eagles, who are from the Tohoku, and as a joke put on hashtag, it's good that it was the Tohoku. And everybody started sharing it and started sharing images of the Tohoku region, tourist spots, places with sakura blooming, all kinds of beauty pictures with that phrase quoted, which shows that Japanese are very quick in sarcasm and in humor, which is not something that people generally associate with the national psyche. But that's the way it works. And that was... I think that the time frame was from the 7 o'clock news, it was all negative, to the 9 o'clock news, all these positive images came out. The news cycle that we're dealing with is much faster, but the ability of people to take the phrases of politics and turn them to their own purposes was another spectacular aspect of this.
One other layer of this story, Michael, I'd like to get into just a bit, is the Koike power play on the Tokyo Metropolitan Government elections that are coming up. They haven't announced the candidates yet. They're going to announce their slate. The LDP is going to announce their slate. But I think also the reason why the prime minister acted so quickly, can you imagine? He's being briefed in the car on the way to make his speech, and they make a decision like that to distance themselves from Imamura's comments. That's so rapid, and they must have been afraid of something.
Well, there certainly shows there that there is a heightened awareness of messaging within. Now, I don't know who's behind it. I don't know who's particularly within the Kante is especially sensitive to it or feels that it's important. But certainly, always framing has been important for the LDP. And it's been very rarely, and maybe it's Suga, because the only time that there's been a real breakdown between what the prime minister wanted to do and what was best for the government was that one time that Abe went to Yasukuni Shrine. And at that point, Mr. Abe said to Suga, I'm going to go. You figure out the explanation. And Suga couldn't think of the way to make to sugarcoat that in the time frame that he was given. Most of the time, Mr. Abe is on board. Mr. Suga is somehow watching over everything. And then there must be real media surveillance that's going on, both at the Kante and also within the LDP.
They've been studying up, haven't they?
Yeah, and they do have a quick reaction force. And that, again, gives them, yet again, another advantage over the DP and other opposition forces who are largely reactive.
Let's talk about the Bank of Japan and their messaging.
Well, the thing is that Mr. Abe, in his economic policies... Yes, we
What?
Yeah. What was the last...
Is there an echo?
Do you hear crickets? It's been a long time since he's been talking about that. Maybe on the next trip that he takes overseas, he'll start up again. But there have been developments in that. The final two deficit hawks on the board of governors of the Bank of Japan are on their way out. And they're going to be replaced by what you could call friends of Abe, or friends of Abenomics, in that they are going to be very much BOJ balance sheet expanders rather than having dissension within the board of governors. There's just going to be a yes man chorus, or whatever you want to call it, that says, fabulous, 80 trillion yen, fabulous.
Economy is picking up.
Yes. Oh, and
we are in expansion mode.
And one of the aspects of that, you're right about the messaging, is this decision by the BOJ or someone who has influence over the BOJ to finally change, after 9 years, the guidance on the economy, saying that it is in expansion. Now, that may be, in fact, a statistically valid way of categorizing it. But it indeed has been 9 years since the BOJ felt that this was the correct
appropriate way to describe it. Right.
And there are all kinds of fallouts from that. One of them is the expectation of higher wages, the expectation of an even tighter labor market than we've got already now, and it's tight as a drum's head right now, with very, very very, very low levels, and in fact, you could almost say negative levels in such things as truck drivers or even caregivers, that there are 5 positions open and only 1 applicant for it. A vastly different situation that exists in most economic systems in the advanced industrialized countries, where we have large amounts of unemployment. Here, it's really, really getting tight. And we had just recently Yamato, Kuroneko Yamato, the delivery service, raising its rate for the first time in decades and reducing the hours that they're willing to work. It's either way that you can cut back. You can either reduce the number of hours that workers work, or you can raise their wages. But some way you have to meet the needs of the customers and match it with the labor market.
Right. Have you noticed an increasing reference to womenomics recently?
It's there, and it's certainly there in the budget description for this year. Whether that's going to carry on into next year is another question, because let's face it, the dip that used to exist, that was really deep for married women after they're having their first child, getting out of the labor force, that thing is getting shallower and shallower and shallower. And the number of people who are staying in their jobs is staying very high. The number of persons who are past retirement age who are staying in the labor market is very high. The overall level of employment of women here in Japan is higher than it is in the United States, and is heading towards basically Scandinavian numbers. There's not a lot of slack left.
No, there's not.
And if indeed the economy is growing, it's either robots or immigrants.
Please stay tuned. We're going to cover these issues. We're going to continue to follow them and report them to you. Please stay tuned.